Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Channel. Tonight, we drift into the season of spring, not just as a change in weather, but as a vast turning of the planet itself. A quiet shift in light and time that awakens forests, stirs oceans, and sends signals racing through soil, sky, and living things. Across the world, hidden systems begin to move in harmony. Seeds respond to warmth. Birds follow ancient routes guided by daylight. Even the ground beneath your feet begins to breathe again. Spring is not a single moment. It is a sequence, a chain of events that unfolds across continents and climates, each part connected to the next. Some changes are easy to see. Others happen far beyond sight, shaping the rhythm of life in ways we rarely notice. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, there is nothing you need to do. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breathing slow, and allow your eyes to grow heavy as we follow the unfolding of this remarkable season. Let's begin. Spring begins because Earth tilts. What changes the season is geometry. Our planet leans as it travels around the sun, and that lean changes how directly sunlight reaches each hemisphere. In northern spring, the north slowly turns back toward the light. Days lengthen. Noon sunlight climbs higher. The ground begins to keep more of the energy it receives instead of losing it each long night. That is why fields thaw, branches wake, and air begins to soften. It feels as if the sun has suddenly become fiercer, but the star itself has not surged for our sake. The real drama is in the angle. A small tilt of about 23.5 degrees is enough to reorganize weather, water, and life across half the world. Spring is the result of a planet changing its posture in space, and from that quiet shift, entire living systems begin again. At the spring equinox, day and night come almost perfectly balanced. For a brief point in Earth's yearly journey, the planet is arranged so that neither hemisphere tilts strongly toward the sun. The result is the famous near balance of light and darkness that people have noticed for thousands of years. It sounds simple, yet even this balance is not exact in the everyday world. Some light bends through the atmosphere. Sunrise is counted from the first rim of the sun, not its center. Mountains and horizons interfere. So the equinox is less like a perfect set of scales and more like an elegant approximation written across the whole globe. Even so, the moment still carries a strange power. After winter, the world seems to pause between two conditions. Cultures built calendars around it. Temples and monuments were aligned to it. And for anyone standing outside at that time of year, there is a real feeling of threshold, as though the year itself has inhaled and is ready to exhale warmth. While one hemisphere blooms into spring, the other slips into autumn. Seasons are not global moods that wash over Earth all at once. They are opposite responses to the same planetary tilt. When the north begins receiving longer days, the south begins losing them. Cherry trees may be opening in one half of the world while leaves are falling in the other. This is one of the most beautiful reminders that Earth is a sphere, not a flat stage with a single sky story unfolding above it. Our sense of what is normal can be very local. A person in England may think of spring as daffodils and lambs. A person in Chile may be moving toward cooler evenings and shorter afternoons at the very same moment. The equinox ties those opposite experiences together in one cosmic arrangement. It is a shared event with opposite consequences, which makes spring feel larger than weather. It becomes a global choreography, with each hemisphere answering the same sunlight in a different voice. A few warmer weeks can wake forests that slept for months. A winter forest can seem empty, as if life has withdrawn completely into bark, roots, and silence. Then a short run of warmer days begins to unlock it. Sap starts to move. Fungi stir beneath leaf litter. Insects emerge from bark crevices and soil chambers. Buds that looked sealed and lifeless begin to swell with cells dividing at remarkable speed. What looks sudden from a distance is really a cascade of tightly timed biological decisions. Many trees have been waiting for a certain amount of cold, followed by enough rising warmth, before they risk opening. That caution matters. Leafing out too early can be dangerous if frost returns. Yet once conditions align, an entire woodland can change character in what feels like an instant. The air smells different. Birdsong multiplies. The floor brightens with early flowers. Spring in a forest is not a slow painting. It is more like a sleeping city switching its lights back on, district by district. Spring sunlight can reset clocks inside leaves, birds, insects, and people. Living things do not simply notice spring. Many of them measure it. Inside bodies and tissues are timing systems shaped by daily light and darkness. As days lengthen, those internal clocks begin to shift. In birds, changing daylight helps trigger hormones linked to singing, migration, and breeding. In plants, day length can influence when buds open, when stems stretch, and when flowering begins. Insects also respond, ending dormant stages and beginning new activity when light signals combine with temperature. Humans are part of this story too. Morning light affects hormones tied to alertness and sleep, which is one reason spring can change mood and energy. What feels like a brighter season outside is also a season of resetting within. The remarkable part is that a sunrise is not just illumination. It is information. Every dawn in spring carries timing instructions, and countless organisms are reading them at once, adjusting their behavior to a planetary schedule written in light. Entire landscapes change when frozen ground softens and water starts moving again. Winter often locks water into place. Snow stores it. Ice traps it. Soil hardens until meltwater cannot easily sink in. Then spring begins to release that stored world. Snowpack shrinks. Frost leaves the earth. Water runs over fields, through ditches, under roots, and into streams that can swell with astonishing speed. In many regions, this is the season when rivers become muscular and restless, carrying sediment, reshaping banks, and reconnecting floatplains that were cut off for months. Wetlands refill. Ponds expand. Hillsides that seemed stable begin to ooze and slip. Even human roads and buildings feel the consequences as the ground shifts under them. The transformation is physical and dramatic, yet it can happen almost invisibly at first, beginning below the surface before the eye catches up. Spring is not only about flowers and birds. It is also about movement returning to the land itself, as water resumes the work of carving, carrying, soaking, and connecting. Some flowers bloom before trees leaf out, racing for unobstructed sunlight. On the forest floor, timing can mean everything. Before the canopy closes overhead, sunlight pours down to the ground in a brief golden window. Certain plants have evolved to seize that chance with astonishing speed. They rise, leaf, flower, and begin storing energy before taller trees spread their shade. That is why woodlands can suddenly fill with bluebells, wood anemones, primroses, or trilliums at a moment when branches above still look bare. These plants are not merely early, they are strategic. Many rely on energy packed away in bulbs, tubers, or rhizomes from the previous year, which lets them grow fast without waiting to build strength from scratch. Their whole schedule is built around a narrow opportunity that may last only a few weeks. By early summer, some will have nearly vanished from sight. The performance is brief, but it reveals something profound. Spring rewards precision, and even beauty can be a form of exquisite timing. Birds do not just sing more in spring, they sing more strategically. To human ears, the season can sound like simple exuberance. Dawn arrives, and hedges, woods, and rooftops fill with song. Yet much of that music is purposeful communication shaped by competition and opportunity. Males often sing to claim territory, warn rivals, and attract mates. Timing matters. The early morning air is cooler and calmer, which helps sound travel farther and more clearly. Singing, then, can be efficient, especially before the day's feeding becomes urgent. Different species also occupy different sound spaces. Some sing high, some low, some with repeated phrases, some with sudden flourishes. It is an acoustic jigsaw that reduces confusion in crowded habitats. In some birds, the complexity of song itself can signal health or experience. So the chorus is not random decoration laid over spring. It is negotiation, advertisement, and defense, performed with astonishing finesse. What sounds like a carefree celebration is also one of the season's most sophisticated conversations. Spring turns silent winter soil into one of Earth's busiest living worlds. Beneath a bare field or garden path lies a community so crowded and active that it can rival a city. Winter slows much of that hidden life, but spring warmth and moisture bring it back into motion. Bacteria begin breaking down fresh organic matter. Fungal threads extend through the soil, linking roots and unlocking nutrients. Nematodes, mites, springtails, and countless other tiny creatures feed, tunnel, hunt, and recycle. Earthworms rise and churn through damp ground, pulling surface material downward and leaving behind casts that enrich structure and fertility. Roots respond too, pushing into loosened spaces and resuming exchanges with the organisms around them. Much of what appears above ground in spring depends on this unseen labor below. Greening landscapes are supported by an underground surge of chemistry, appetite, and cooperation. A patch of soil can look still from the surface, yet in spring it becomes one of the liveliest places on the planet, crowded with workers no eye can easily see. Much of spring's beauty begins with invisible signals, not visible blossoms. Before the first obvious burst of color, the season has already begun in secret. Cells inside buds are responding to lengthening days and rising temperatures. Hormones shift within stems and roots. Stored sugars start moving to the places where growth will soon erupt. Insects sense changes in heat and light long before most people notice anything unusual. Migrating animals respond to cues that may originate hundreds or even thousands of miles away. Spring often looks sudden because the visible part arrives late in the process. Blossoms, leaves, and hatchlings are the reveal, not the beginning. The beginning is hidden in thresholds being crossed and messages being passed through bodies, tissues, and landscapes. That makes the season feel almost magical, though it is deeply biological. Beauty appears to bloom out of nowhere, but it does not come from nowhere at all. It is the final expression of countless silent decisions, all gathering in the dark before they reach the light. The word spring once meant leaping upward, like water from the ground. Long before it named a season, the word carried the sense of sudden rising movement. It was linked to the action of bursting forth, the way water springs from the earth or something tightly held suddenly releases. That older meaning fits the season uncannily well. After months of restraint, the world does seem to leap. Shoots break upward through soil. Buds open with surprising speed. Streams swell and run free. Lambs bound across fields with the same energy hidden in the word itself. Language often preserves old ways of seeing, and this is a wonderful example. People were not naming a date on a calendar. They were naming an action. They heard motion in the season before they defined it with astronomy. In that sense, spring is not merely a period between winter and summer. It is an eruption. It is the year suddenly uncoiling, as though the planet had been holding its breath and can finally move again. Vernal means spring, and it comes from an old word for green. The term sounds formal now, something from a calendar, a textbook, or the name of an equinox. Yet buried inside it is a much earthier idea. Its ancestry reaches back to Latin words connected with freshness, flourishing, and the color green. That makes it more than a technical label. It carries the memory of leafing, sprouting, and renewal. There is something beautiful in the fact that one of our most polished seasonal words began with the visual shock of greenery returning to the land. In winter, green can become rare across huge areas. Then spring arrives, and suddenly the world begins restoring its color, first in hints, then in floods. Lawns brighten, moss glows, hedges deepen. Tree crowns that looked skeletal begin filling with living pigment. So when we say vernal, we are quietly invoking the ancient astonishment of seeing life turn green again. The word itself contains a season's central miracle, which is the return of color after absence. Meteorological spring begins before astronomical spring, using weather instead of stars. There is more than one way to decide when a season begins. Astronomical spring is tied to the equinox and to Earth's position in space. Meteorological spring is simpler and more practical. It groups whole months together so scientists can compare temperatures, rainfall, and seasonal patterns more consistently from year to year. In the Northern Hemisphere, that usually means beginning on the first day of March. This can feel slightly strange because the sky has not reached its equinox turning point yet. Yet, from a climate point of view, it makes sense. Weather does not wait for a single celestial moment to become seasonally useful. It shifts in averages, trends, and broad rhythms. This dual system reveals something fascinating about spring itself. It is both an event in orbit and a pattern in air. One definition belongs to the geometry of the planet. The other belongs to the habits of clouds, winds, temperatures, and the people trying to measure them. The equinox is not equal everywhere because sunrise and sunset are tricky. The old idea sounds so neat. Equal day, equal night. Yet the real world refuses to be perfectly tidy. For one thing, sunrise and sunset are measured from the upper edge of the sun, rather than its center. Light also bends as it passes through Earth's atmosphere, which makes the sun appear above the horizon when it is actually still below it. That stretch of light lengthens the day a little. Local landscape matters too. Hills, valleys, buildings, and mountains change when the sun becomes visible and when it disappears. Near the poles, the situation grows stranger still because dawn and dusk behave very differently from the way they do farther south or north. So the equinox is not a universal day of exact equality delivered identically to every place. It is a celestial alignment filtered through air, terrain, and human definitions. That makes it more interesting, not less. Even balance, it turns out, arrives shaped by the world it touches. Earth is actually nearer the sun during northern winter than spring. This surprises many people because it feels so backward. If warmth ruled the seasons through simple distance, then the northern hemisphere should be hottest in January. Instead, Earth reaches its closest point to the sun in early January, during northern winter. The difference in distance does matter a little, but not nearly enough to overpower the effect of our planet's tilt. Angle and day length remain the real architects of the seasons. That means spring begins not because we are steadily cruising toward a stronger furnace, but because our hemisphere is being turned into better light. There is a quiet elegance in that. A small lean matters more than millions of miles of orbital distance. Even more intriguing, the southern hemisphere experiences its summer near that same closest approach, which softens the contrast a bit between the hemispheres. The lesson is wonderfully counterintuitive. The seasons are not a story of nearer and farther. They are a story of how sunlight arrives and how long it stays. Spring arrives earlier at low elevations than it does on mountains. Travel uphill in spring and it can feel as if you are moving backward through the season. In valleys, fruit trees may already be flowering, while higher slopes still hold bare branches or lingering snow. Temperature is the main reason. Air generally cools with height, so the biological signals that trigger growth and activity take longer to accumulate in mountain landscapes. This creates stacked versions of the same season across a single region. Farmers in lower ground may be sowing or watching blossom, while skiers remain active not far above them. Wildlife responds as well. Insects emerge at different times. Birds track food peaks that move with altitude. Botanists sometimes describe this as a compressed journey from one month to another made possible in a single day's climb. It is one of the clearest signs that spring is not a date stamped evenly across the land. It is a moving frontier, and mountains reveal its progress with beautiful clarity. On some mountainsides, spring climbs uphill like a slow green tide. Seen from a distance, the change can be astonishing. A slope that looked brown or grey begins showing a band of fresh colour low down. Then that band steadily advances upward over days or weeks. It resembles a shoreline of green creeping toward the summit. This happens because temperature, snow cover, soil thaw, and plant readiness all vary with altitude. Leaves and grasses do not awaken everywhere at once. They respond in sequence, producing a visible wave of renewal that can be tracked by hikers, photographers, and satellites alike. In some regions, people have used this progression for generations to judge grazing time or seasonal travel. Animals notice it too, following the moving flush of nutritious growth. The phenomenon gives spring a shape you can almost point to with your finger. Instead of being an abstract seasonal idea, it becomes a line advancing across a mountain face. The season seems to climb step by step, turning height into a calendar written in living color. River ice can break apart with explosive force when spring thaw begins. A winter river may look frozen into silence, but beneath that stillness, pressure can be building. As temperatures rise, meltwater increases, the current strengthens, and the bond between ice and shore begins to fail. Then comes the breakup. Sheets crack, buckle, heave, and ram into one another with sounds like thunder or artillery. In some places, the event is so violent that people gather to watch from a safe distance. Huge slabs can pile into jagged ridges taller than a person. Ice jams may suddenly block a channel, forcing water to rise and flood nearby land before the jam gives way with terrifying speed. Entire bridges have been damaged by these moving masses. The drama is unforgettable because it turns something that seemed rigid and settled into raw motion and noise. Spring thaw is often imagined as softness, dripping, and slow release. Rivers remind us that it can also arrive as fracture, collision, and power unleashed all at once. Snowmelt can feed rivers so powerfully, but whole valleys reshape themselves. Snow is not only winter scenery. In many places, it is a delayed reservoir spread across mountains, forests, and open ground. When spring warmth releases that stored water, rivers can swell far beyond their cold season channels. The extra force picks up gravel, sand, fallen branches, and even boulders. Banks collapse. Side channels reopen. Gravel bars shift downstream. Floodplains that looked stable reveal themselves as temporary arrangements. Over years and centuries, this process builds and rebuilds entire valleys. It lays down fertile sediment for farms, creates wetlands for birds and amphibians, and carves new patterns across the land. Human maps often make rivers seem fixed, but spring runoff shows how restless they really are. A valley is not just a static gap between hills. It is the product of repeated seasonal work, much of it done during melt. When snow turns to current, landscapes are edited in real time, and the handwriting of water becomes impossible to ignore. Some deserts wait years for spring rain, then bloom almost overnight. A desert can appear empty in one season and impossibly alive in the next. The secret lies in patience. Many desert plants survive as seeds resting in the soil through heat, drought, and wind, sometimes for years, waiting for the right combination of rain and temperature. When that rare spring arrives, the response can be explosive. Seeds germinate together. Stems rise fast. Flowers spread across ground that seemed barren only days before. California's famous superblooms are one example, but similar transformations happen in deserts around the world whenever stored potential finally meets enough water. Pollinators rush in. The air fills with insects. Annual plants complete their whole life cycle in a short burst before dryness returns. It feels miraculous because the landscape appears to reveal a hidden identity. Yet the life was there all along, folded into the dust as possibility. Spring rain in a desert does not create life from nothing. It unlocks a waiting world. Spring peepers can fill entire wetlands with sound despite their tiny size. A spring peeper is small enough to sit on a coin, yet a marsh full of them can sound enormous. On early spring nights, males gather around shallow water and call with a sharp peeping note that carries surprisingly far through cool air. What makes the chorus so striking is not just the volume of one frog, but the combined force of hundreds or thousands calling at once. A quiet pond can suddenly seem alive with electrical energy. Each call is a declaration that breeding season has begun, and the males are advertising themselves across the dark. Their bodies are tiny, but their throat sacs act like little resonating balloons, boosting the sound far beyond what their size suggests. To hear them is to realize that spring is not only visible in blossoms and leaves. It is audible in the wetlands too, where creatures scarcely larger than a thumb can announce the season with astonishing confidence. Frogs often return to the exact ponds where they first hatched. Many frogs begin life in a particular pond, ditch, or flooded hollow, and years later, they may find their way back to that same place to breed. This behavior is called natal homing, and it is one of spring's quiet marvels. A small animal that spends much of its life hidden in grass, mud, or woodland can somehow relocate the water body of its birth across a changing landscape. Scientists think they may use a mix of cues, including scent, the position of the land, moisture, and even Earth's magnetic field. Whatever the mechanism, the result feels extraordinary. A pond is not just random water to them. It is a remembered destination. In spring, adults begin moving toward it with surprising determination. That means a wet hollow in a field may be part nursery, part ancestral site, part gathering place revisited year after year. The season becomes not only a time of breeding, but also a time of return. Salamanders cross roads on rainy spring nights to reach breeding pools. For much of the year, many salamanders stay hidden under logs, stones, and leaf litter in damp woodland, almost never seen. Then spring rain arrives on a mild night, and suddenly they begin moving. Drawn toward temporary pools where they breed, they travel with determined slowness across the forest floor, sometimes in large numbers. Where roads cut through those old routes, an extraordinary and precarious migration becomes visible. Headlights reveal glossy bodies inching across wet tarmac, each one on a journey that may have happened for generations before the road existed. In some places, volunteers now patrol these nights with buckets and torches, helping salamanders cross safely. The spectacle is easy to miss unless you know when to look, yet it changes how a landscape feels. An ordinary spring road becomes a migration corridor. The rain becomes a signal, and the dark ground at your feet turns out to be busy with one of the season's most secret pilgrimages. Vernal pools appear in spring, then vanish before summer arrives. Some of the richest spring habitats are places that do not last. Vernal pools fill with meltwater and rain, hold for a few weeks or months, and then disappear as temperatures rise and the ground dries. Because they are temporary, fish usually cannot live in them, and that makes them precious breeding sites for amphibians and insects whose eggs and young would otherwise be eaten. Wood frogs, fairy shrimp, and countless tiny creatures depend on these brief waters. What looks like an ordinary puddle in a woodland hollow can be a complete seasonal world, crowded with eggs, larvae, and darting life. Their short existence gives them a strange beauty. They are not permanent ponds with stable edges and familiar residents. They are emergency stages built by spring itself. By summer, many are gone, leaving cracked mud or leaf litter behind. Yet next year, with the right weather, they may return and become nurseries all over again. Some insects spend most of their lives waiting underground for spring. For many insects, the dramatic moment we notice above ground is only the final act of a much longer hidden life. Beneath soil, inside roots, or tucked among leaf litter, larvae may spend months or even years feeding, growing, and waiting through cold seasons until spring offers the right conditions for transformation. Some moths and beetles overwinter in pupal chambers. Certain cicadas remain underground for astonishingly long periods, though their great emergences belong to a larger rhythm than any single spring. What matters is that the season often reveals creatures that have been preparing in darkness for far longer than we imagine. A beetle on a blossom or a fly in a sunlit clearing may be the result of an underground childhood we never witnessed. That changes the way spring feels. It is not just a beginning, it is also an unveiling. The air fills with life that did not appear from nowhere, but rose from hidden worlds already in progress. Queen bumblebees wake alone in spring and build whole colonies from scratch. The first bumblebees of the year are often queens, and each one begins the season as a solitary founder. She has survived winter in a sheltered place, buried in soil or hidden among plant debris, carrying within her the future of an entire colony. When spring warmth reaches the ground, she emerges hungry and vulnerable. Her first task is to refuel on nectar and find pollen for developing eggs. Then she must locate a nesting site, perhaps an abandoned mouse hole or a cavity under grass. Inside that small chamber, she shapes wax pots, lays her first eggs, and warms them with her own body like a living furnace. At first, she does everything herself: foraging, brooding, defending, and building. Only when the first workers emerge does the colony begin to take on the bustling form we recognize later in the season. Early spring, then, is full of tiny empires not yet built, each one resting on the effort of one determined queen. Many butterflies can taste with their feet while choosing spring plants. A butterfly landing on a leaf is not merely resting, In many species, it is testing the plant with taste receptors on its feet. This seems almost magical, yet it solves an urgent problem. Females must choose the right plants for laying eggs, because their caterpillars may only be able to eat a narrow range of leaves. A mistake can mean starvation for the next generation. By drumming their feet against a surface, butterflies detect chemical signals that tell them whether a plant is suitable. Spring makes this process especially important because fresh growth offers a brief and valuable opportunity. New leaves can be softer, richer, and easier for young caterpillars to eat than older foliage later in the year. So when a butterfly flutters through a bright patch of spring vegetation, it is not wandering blindly through color. It is making fine chemical judgments with every landing, reading the plant world through its feet as though the ground itself were speaking. Spring pollen can travel hundreds of miles before finally reaching your nose. Pollen feels local because we experience it in local air, on nearby cars, or in the trees outside the window. Yet some of it has traveled far longer distances than most people would guess. Fine grains released by trees and other plants can be lifted high into the atmosphere and carried by winds across regions, seas, and national borders before settling again. That means the sneeze you blame on the nearest hedgerow may partly owe its existence to forests or fields far away. Scientists track airborne pollen much like they track dust or smoke, and the patterns can be astonishing. Entire weather systems help distribute these tiny plant cells across vast spaces. This gives spring a hidden geography. Flowering in one place can influence the air in another. The season becomes not only a matter of local buds opening, but also a continental exchange of microscopic travelers. Every breath during pollen season can contain a map of landscapes you have never seen. Trees can release so much pollen that ponds briefly turn yellow. During peak flowering, some trees release pollen in such extraordinary quantities that the landscape seems dusted with sulfur. Pine is especially famous for this. Its light grains drift onto cars, windowsills, and clothing, then gather in still water where they form yellow films or floating swirls along the edges of ponds. To someone who does not know the cause, it can look like paint or pollution poured across the surface overnight. In truth, it is a reproductive strategy built on abundance. Wind pollination is inefficient compared with sending insects directly to a target flower, so these trees solve the problem by sheer volume. They flood the air and trust the currents. The result can be oddly beautiful, as if spring has powdered the world in gold. It also reveals that flowering is not always a delicate, petal-rich affair. Sometimes it is industrial in scale, with millions of grains launched at once until even the water carries visible traces of the season's invisible work. Bees see ultraviolet patterns on spring flowers that humans cannot see. To human eyes, a flower may look simple, perhaps white, yellow, or blue. To a bee, the same blossom can display a hidden set of markings that guide it straight to nectar and pollen. Many flowers reflect ultraviolet light in patterns invisible to us, often creating targets, lines, or dark central zones, sometimes called nectar guides. These signals help pollinators land efficiently and find the reward quickly. Spring flowers make especially rich use of this visual language because early pollination can be a race. A bloom must attract attention in a crowded landscape where timing matters. What appears plain to us may be blazing with contrast to a bee. This means spring is layered. There is the version we see, and another version superimposed upon it, full of luminous signs meant for different eyes. A meadow in bloom is not only colorful, it is also covered in secret instructions, written in wavelengths our species cannot read without instruments. Some blossoms warm themselves, creating tiny pockets of spring heat. Not every flower passively accepts the chill of early spring. Some can actively raise their own temperature above the surrounding air, turning themselves into small, warm chambers in a cold landscape. This ability, called thermogenesis, appears in plants such as skunt cabbage, which can generate enough heat to melt surrounding snow and push up through it. The warmth helps in several ways. It can protect delicate tissues from freezing. It can release scent more effectively into cold air. And it can attract insects that are sluggish in low temperatures and suddenly find a sheltered, warmer place waiting for them. Imagine kneeling beside a patch of lingering snow and discovering that one of the flowers is not merely surviving there, but making its own climate. That changes the whole feeling of spring. The season is not just received by living things. In some cases, it is actively manufactured, blossom by blossom, as plants create their own tiny islands of warmth. Crocuses can push through late snow using stored energy from underground bulbs. A crocus does not begin its spring work when you first see the flower. Much of the preparation happened long before winter arrived. Beneath the soil, the plant has stored energy in a bulb-like corm, packing away resources from the previous growing season. When conditions begin to improve, that reserve fuels a rapid upward surge. The shoots are narrow, pointed, and surprisingly tough, which helps them press through cold soil and even thin layers of snow. That is why crocuses can look so startling when they appear, bright petals rising out of a landscape that still seems trapped in winter. They are not improvised miracles. They are carefully financed ones. Last year's sunlight has been saved underground and spent at exactly the right moment. Their appearance tells a deeper story about spring. Renewal often depends on hidden preparation. What looks delicate on the surface can be powered by remarkable strength below, waiting patiently until the season gives permission to emerge. Daffodils bloom from leaves and flowers prepared inside last year's bulb. A daffodil seems to arrive fresh from nowhere, but in truth, much of its spring display was assembled the year before. Inside the bulb, tucked beneath protective scales, the plant forms miniature leaves and the beginnings of the next flower, while the previous season is still ending. That means a spring bloom is partly the result of old work carried safely through winter underground. The bulb acts as both pantry and shelter, storing food and protecting a ready-made structure until rising warmth and moisture tell it to continue. When the shoot finally emerges, it is not inventing itself from scratch. It is resuming a plan already underway. There is something wonderful in that hidden continuity. A daffodil in March contains the memory of last year's sunlight, gathered through its leaves and sealed away in preparation for a future season. Spring, in this case, is less a sudden beginning than a promise kept in darkness and fulfilled in gold. Tulips did not begin in the Netherlands, but in Central Asia. Tulips feel inseparable from Dutch fields, yet their deeper story begins much farther east across the mountains and steppes of Central Asia. Wild tulip species evolved in regions shaped by harsh winters, dry summers, and open landscapes where bulbs could survive underground through difficult seasons. From there, tulips traveled west through cultivation and trade, becoming treasured in the Ottoman world long before they became symbols of the Netherlands. By the time Europe fell in love with them, these flowers already had a long cultural journey behind them. That history makes the familiar spring image of endless Dutch rose even more fascinating. It is not a tale of local origin, but of movement, adaptation, and reinvention. A flower born in one landscape became iconic in another. Spring gardens often feel rooted and timeless, yet many are full of travelers. Tulips remind us that the season's beauty can carry hidden maps, with petals opening above histories of empire, exchange, and migration. Cherry blossom season can sweep across a country like a moving wave. In some places, flowering does not arrive everywhere at once. It advances. Warmer regions begin first, Then cooler areas follow, creating a visible progression that can be tracked almost like weather. Cherry blossom season in Japan is a famous example. Broadcasters and forecasters follow the bloom as it moves northward, and people plan gatherings around its expected arrival. The phenomenon feels almost cinematic. A nation waits, watches, and then sees spring travel through it in stages. The trees themselves become timekeepers, announcing the season in one city while another still waits a little longer. This movement reveals that spring is not only about what happens, but also where and when it unfolds across geography. A blossom wave turns a familiar landscape into a sequence. One region finishes as another begins. The season becomes mobile, almost migratory. Rather than appearing as a fixed date on a calendar, it moves like a living front of beauty crossing the land. Japan has tracked blossom timing for more than 1,000 years. Few seasonal events have been watched as closely or for as long as cherry blossom timing in Japan. Records of flowering dates in places such as Kyoto stretch back for more than a millennium through court diaries, chronicles, poems, and official observations. That gives us something extraordinary. We do not just have memories of spring. We have a long human record of when it arrived. Behind all the beauty lies a remarkable archive of attention. People noticed. They wrote it down. They cared enough to preserve the moment year after year. This turns blossom time into more than a cultural celebration. It becomes one of the most delicate long-term environmental records on Earth. A tree in bloom joins present experience to centuries of watching eyes. It is hard to think of many other spring phenomena documented with such continuity. Each flowering season enters a conversation already 1,000 years old, adding one more line to a story written in petals and time. Spring flowering can reveal climate shifts written quietly into historical records. When old diaries, garden notes, temple records, and estate accounts mention the first bloom of familiar plants, they capture more than a charming seasonal detail. They preserve biological timing, and that timing can reveal how climate has changed across decades and centuries. If blossoms are appearing earlier than they once did, the shift may reflect warming patterns in late winter and early spring. This is why historians and scientists can work together in such a beautiful way. A monk noting cherry flowers, a landowner recording orchard bloom, or a naturalist listing first hawthorn can all contribute to modern understanding. The evidence is subtle, yet powerful. It does not come from giant machines or satellites alone. It also comes from people who paid attention to the living calendar around them. Spring leaves traces in archives as well as fields. A faded line in an old notebook can become a climate signal, showing that even beauty can function as data across time. Maple sap runs best when spring days warm and nights still freeze. The sweetest days for sap are often the most unstable ones, when winter has not fully let go and spring is pressing in. In sugar maples, the flow responds to a rhythm of freezing nights and warmer days. Cold nights help create pressure changes inside the tree, and daytime thaw allows sap to move in a way that can be tapped. The result is a brief and highly anticipated season in forests where buckets, tubing, and evaporators become part of the landscape. It is a remarkable partnership between weather and tree physiology. Too cold, and little happens. Too warm at night, and the pattern weakens. The best flow lives in the tension between seasons. That gives maple sugaring a special atmosphere. It belongs to the threshold itself, when mud returns to paths and sunlight has new strength, yet frost still grips the dark hours. The syrup begins there, born from a precise conversation between freezing and thawing. Spring sap is not tree bud, but mostly water with dissolved sugar. When people picture sap, they often imagine a thick liquid like syrup, already flowing inside the trunk. The reality is subtler and, in some ways, more astonishing. In early spring, the fluid moving through certain trees is mostly water carrying dissolved sugars and other compounds. Those sugars were largely made by leaves in earlier seasons and stored by the tree, then mobilized as growth begins again. In maples, this is the source tapped for syrup production. But the raw liquid is much lighter and far less sweet than the finished result. It takes a great deal of boiling to concentrate it into the rich amber substance people know. Understanding this changes how you see a tree in spring. It is not filled with something like blood. It is circulating resources, redistributing energy, and financing a new season of growth from reserves gathered in the past. A spring trunk is less a body bleeding than a living treasury being opened. Catkins are spring flowers, even when they barely look like flowers. Many people pass catkins without realizing they are looking at blossoms. They lack the obvious drama of petals, yet these dangling or tufted structures are flowers all the same, produced by trees such as willow, hazel, alder, birch, and oak. Their modest appearance makes sense once you understand the job. Many depend on wind rather than showy pollinators, so they do not need bright petals or heavy scent. Instead, they often appear as soft tassels or clusters packed with reproductive parts, ready to shed or receive pollen in huge quantities. Some arrive before leaves, which helps the wind move more freely through branches. There is something quietly thrilling about this. Spring beauty is not limited to what humans instinctively admire. Part of the season's flowering is subtle, strange, and easily overlooked unless you know what to see. A hazel branch dusting the air with pollen is every bit as much a spring bloom as a rose in summer. Willow branches can root so easily that broken twigs may start trees. A willow is one of spring's great opportunists. Snap off a branch, leave it in wet ground, and there is a real chance it will begin growing roots and become a new tree. That talent comes from an extraordinary readiness to regenerate. Willows are packed with growth hormones and tissues that respond quickly when moisture and contact with soil make survival possible. Along riverbanks and floodplains, this gives them a huge advantage. Spring floods can break branches, carry them downstream, and lodge them in mud, where some begin life again. What looks like storm damage can become a form of reproduction. Whole lines of trees may owe their existence to drifting fragments that found the right patch of wet earth. There is something wonderfully unruly about that. Spring is full of careful timing and delicate signals. Yet here is a tree that can begin again through accident, using breakage itself as an opening into new life. Aspen groves can leaf out from one vast underground living network. A stand of aspen may look like many individual trees, each with its own trunk, crown, and place in the world. Yet in some cases, the grove is more like one organism wearing many stems. Aspens can reproduce by sending up new shoots from a shared root system, which means a whole grove may be genetically identical and physically connected underground. What appears above the soil is a forest of separate trunks. What exists below may be a single living network spreading across a large area. In spring, that hidden unity becomes visible as fresh leaves shimmer into life together. The grove can behave like a coordinated colony because, in an important sense, it is one. Some famous aspen clones have survived for astonishing lengths of time by replacing stems again and again while the root system endures. This makes spring leafing feel deeper than seasonal decoration. It is an old organism renewing its surface, sending up another generation of itself. Some spring leaves emerge red, not green, for their first days. The first leaves of spring do not always arrive in the color we expect. On some trees and shrubs, new growth emerges flushed with red, bronze, or copper, before gradually turning green. This is not a failure of chlorophyll, but part of a clever strategy. young leaves are delicate. They are still building their full photosynthetic machinery and can be vulnerable to intense sunlight, cool temperatures, and hungry insects. Red pigments called anthocyanins may help protect those fresh tissues by acting like a kind of sunscreen and by reducing certain kinds of stress while the leaf is still maturing. The result is one of spring's quieter surprises. A tree can seem to ignite from the tips outward, not with flowers, but with tinted new foliage. Those strange reddish crowns are a reminder that early growth is a risky phase. Before a leaf settles into its familiar green life, it may pass through a more guarded and more dramatic beginning. Young spring leaves are often softer because they have little defense yet. A newly opened leaf is not the finished product we meet later in summer. At first it is thin, tender, and often rich in water and nutrients, because it has not yet had time to toughen itself against the world. Structural fibers are still developing. Chemical defenses may still be low. Waxy coatings that help resist drying and damage are not yet fully established. To a hungry caterpillar or browsing deer, that makes early foliage especially valuable. Spring herbivores are not simply eating because plants are present. They are taking advantage of a brief period when leaves are more edible and easier to digest. This vulnerability helps explain the urgency built into so many spring food chains. Insects hatch to match it. Birds time nesting to exploit the insect boom that follows. A soft leaf may seem like a tiny thing, yet it shapes a season of feeding above and below the branches. Entire lives are timed to that brief tenderness. Forest floors bloom early because the canopy has not closed above. Before the trees fully leaf out, the woodland floor experiences a rare season of abundance. Sunlight reaches down almost unhindered, warming the soil and illuminating the space where small plants wait for their chance. That brief interval is enough to trigger one of spring's most beautiful transformations. Herbs and wildflowers surge into growth, flower quickly, and begin storing energy before the overhead leaves cast them back into shade. The timing is so precise that a woodland can look completely different just weeks apart. First bright with open light and blossom, then dim and green beneath a newly closed canopy. What makes this so fascinating is the architecture of the forest itself. The tallest plants set the schedule for the smallest. A change in the crowns above determines whether the ground below will blaze with life or sink into shadow. Spring becomes a moment of vertical opportunity when the whole forest briefly opens a window and the understory rushes through it. Wild garlic can scent entire woodlands during a short spring window. Walk through the right woodland in spring, and the air can suddenly smell of garlic, sharp and green, as if the forest itself has opened a kitchen. That scent often comes from wild garlic, also called ramsons, a plant that spreads in colonies across damp, shady ground and takes full advantage of the bright interval before heavy summer shade settles in. Its broad leaves gather light quickly, and its starry white flowers can later cover the floor in drifts. Yet it is the smell that often arrives first, released when leaves are crushed underfoot or simply warmed by the day. The effect is unforgettable because it turns a whole woodland into something aromatic and strangely intimate. This is not perfume drifting from a single flower. It is an atmosphere produced by thousands of plants occupying the same brief seasonal window. Spring often announces itself through sight, but in places like this, it enters through the nose first and claims the memory that way. Bluebells can create spring carpets so dense they alter woodland light. When bluebells bloom in great numbers, they do more than add color. They change the visual character of a woodland from the ground up. Their flowers gather in such density that the forest floor begins reflecting a cool blue-violet tint back into the lower air, subtly shifting the mood of the whole place. On some days, the effect feels almost unreal. as if the woods are illuminated from below. This is one reason large native bluebell displays can seem so haunting. The flowers are numerous enough to become an optical environment rather than a collection of individual plants. Insects move through them. Tree trunks rise out of them. Paths appear to float between them. Because the display happens during a narrow spring interval, it carries a powerful sense of occasion. You are not just seeing flowers. You are stepping into a temporary lightscape created by mass flowering at exactly the right time before the season moves on and the spell is broken. Spring ephemerals finish most of their lives before summer really begins. Some plants live spring at a pace that feels almost impossible. They emerge, leaf, flower, attract pollinators, set seed, and then retreat underground or fade back into invisibility long before summer reaches its height. These are the spring ephemerals, and their whole strategy is built around speed. They exploit the narrow interval of light and moisture available in woodlands before the canopy closes and conditions grow darker and drier below. To us, they seem fleeting. To them, the season is enough. Species such as trout lily, bloodroot, Dutchman's breeches, and many others have turned brevity into survival. Their visible lives may last only weeks, yet underground organs store resources that allow them to repeat the cycle year after year. There is something deeply moving in that rhythm. A plant can be ancient in persistence, but brief in appearance. Spring is the moment when such hidden veterans surface, perform their entire drama, and vanish before many people know they were there. Many birds time migration using daylight, not temperature or weather. It is tempting to imagine migrating birds simply waiting for a pleasant day and then setting off, but many are guided by something steadier and more reliable than local weather. They respond to changing day length. As spring advances, longer daylight triggers internal hormonal changes that prepare them for movement, feeding, fat storage, and reproductive behavior. This matters because weather can be wildly inconsistent from one year to the next. Day length, by contrast, follows a dependable planetary pattern. A bird wintering far away may begin preparing for travel before northern landscapes have warmed at all. That can lead to remarkable precision, with species reaching breeding grounds on schedules shaped by light, rather than by what the air happens to feel like one afternoon. The journey becomes part of a global clock. Spring migration is not merely a reaction to warmth. It is an annual response to astronomy itself, with birds reading the lengthening day as a signal that the route north is opening once again. Some birds travel thousands of miles and arrive within days of blossoms. One of spring's quiet wonders is how accurately some migrants meet the season after journeys of extraordinary length. Warblers, swallows, flycatchers, and many others may cross seas, deserts, and entire continents, yet still arrive on breeding grounds just as insects are increasing, leaves are opening, or flowering is beginning. The match is not perfect every year, but when it works, it feels astonishing. A creature weighing less than a letter can leave Africa or southern Europe and appear in a northern hedgerow as the world there is just becoming hospitable. This is timing on a continental scale. The bird must navigate, survive, and reach a landscape that has been changing without it. Arrival too early can mean cold and hunger. Too late can mean lost territories or missed food peaks. Spring asks for precision, and migration answers with one of nature's most breathtaking feats. These birds do not simply come back. They return on schedule to a season that has been moving to meet them. The dawn chorus grows loudest in spring, when songs matter most. There is a reason the spring dawn chorus can sound almost overwhelming. At that time of year, song is not background decoration. It is one of the main tools birds use to shape their lives. Males sing to claim space, attract mates, and signal stamina at the very moment those things matter most. In winter, many species stay quieter because the stakes are lower. In spring, every morning can influence who breeds, who holds the best territory, and who gets heard. That is why the chorus swells with such urgency. Blackbirds, robins, wrens, thrushes, and many others overlap in a layered burst of sound that can begin before sunrise and spread through hedges, gardens, parks, and woodland edges. To human ears it feels joyful, and sometimes it is. Yet beneath that beauty lies intense seasonal purpose. The chorus is spring made audible, a daily competition and courtship performance unfolding in the hour when the world first brightens. Male birds often sing at sunrise because cool air carries sound well. The earliest part of the day gives birds an acoustic advantage. Before the ground has warmed and the air begins to churn, sound can travel with surprising clarity through the stillness. That makes sunrise a useful time to broadcast a message across a territory or into neighboring habitat. The low angle of the light also means many birds are not yet feeding intensely, so the first task of the day can be to sing. A male perched on a rooftop, a hedge top, or the upper branch of a tree is using the atmosphere itself as an ally. Cool, calmer air helps his notes travel farther and arrive with less distortion. In a crowded spring landscape, that matters. A strong song can warn rivals, advertise fitness, and reach potential mates beyond the nearest thicket. What sounds like beauty spilling into the morning is also efficient communication. Birds are not only celebrating dawn, they are choosing the hour when their voices work best. Some birds grow brighter feathers just before spring courtship begins. Not all seasonal change happens in song. In some birds, spring also transforms appearance. As courtship approaches, plumage can become cleaner, richer, and more striking, either through a fresh molt or through the wearing away of dull feather edges that have masked brighter colors beneath. A bird that looked modest in winter may suddenly flash vivid tones, sharp markings, or bold contrasts once the breeding season nears. This is more than ornament. Bright plumage can signal health, age, and condition to potential mates, while also helping rivals judge one another. Goldfinches, ducks, and many other species show this kind of seasonal upgrade. It is one of spring's most elegant tricks. The same individual can seem to change identity without changing species, simply because the season calls for visibility. The landscape is not only filling with flowers and leaves, it is also filling with birds that are, in effect, dressing for the most important social season of their year. Great crested grebes perform spring dances that look choreographed by humans. On calm spring water, great crested grebes can put on displays so elaborate they seem almost invented by the human imagination. Pairs face one another, shake their heads, rise upright from the water chest to chest, and sometimes present each other with strands of weed in a movement known as the weed dance. Their chestnut face plumes and dark crests make the whole performance even more theatrical. What looks like a graceful duet is part bond strengthening, part courtship, and part communication between birds that may already have paired. The precision is what makes it so mesmerizing. Each movement appears answered by another. Each posture seems timed. It is easy to forget you are watching wild animals and not rehearsed performers. Spring is full of life returning, but here it returns with ceremony. On a lake or red-fringed reservoir, two grebes can turn the season into a stage, reminding us that courtship in nature can be every bit as dramatic as any dance devised by people. Many mammals schedule births so spring food arrives with their young. For mammals, timing birth well can mean the difference between thriving and failing. Many species arrange pregnancy so their young arrive when spring is increasing the supply of food, cover, and milder weather. Fresh grass supports grazing mothers. Young leaves and herbs feed browsers. Insects multiply for species that depend on them. Shelter thickens as vegetation grows. This timing helps females recover the enormous cost of pregnancy and milk production just as the landscape becomes more generous. It also gives newborns a better chance of surviving their most vulnerable weeks. Deer, hares, foxes, and many small mammals all benefit in different ways from that seasonal alignment. The remarkable part is that the decision is made long before the young appear. Mating, implantation, gestation, and birth all have to line up with a future world not yet present. Spring, then, is not only a season of new life. It is the carefully anticipated destination of reproductive timing months in the making. Hares can seem to go mad in spring because courtship looks chaotic. The phrase, "mad as a March hare," did not come from nowhere. In spring, hares can behave in ways that look wild, frantic, and almost comical to human observers. They chase at speed across fields, leap, twist, and rear up on hind legs as if engaged in a boxing match. For centuries, people saw this and concluded that something strange had overtaken them. In reality, much of the spectacle is tied to breeding. Females may fend off over-enthusiastic males with punches and kicks. Males pursue, test, and compete in fast-moving encounters that scatter across open ground. The result is a season of visible drama in animals that are otherwise elusive and quiet. What makes it so striking is the contrast. A creature associated with stillness and caution suddenly becomes a symbol of reckless energy. Spring brings out not only tenderness and blossom, but also urgency, competition, and absurd athleticism played out in broad daylight across the fields. Deer grow new antlers in spring, wrapped in living velvet skin. After shedding their old antlers, many male deer begin growing a completely new set in spring, and at first, these antlers are nothing like the hard branching structures seen later in the year. They are covered in soft velvet, a living skin rich with blood vessels and nerves that feeds the rapid growth beneath. During this stage, antlers are among the fastest growing tissues in the animal kingdom. What begins as rounded protrusions can expand into elaborate frameworks over a matter of months. It is a stunning example of seasonal construction. Spring is the opening phase of that process, when the future weapons and display structures of autumn are still tender and vulnerable. The site is strangely intimate. Power is present, but not yet hardened. A stag in velvet looks unfinished, as though the season itself is still sculpting him. In that way, antler growth captures something essential about spring. It is a time when forms are being built, not merely revealed. Baby foxes are born blind into a season already bursting alive. A fox cub enters the world in remarkable contrast to the season around it. Outside the den, spring may already be loud with birdsong, bright with growth, and thick with movement. Inside, the newborn is tiny, dark, blind, and completely dependent. For its first days and weeks, it experiences the season not as a landscape, but as warmth, milk, siblings, and the close safety of the earth around it. That hidden beginning makes the later emergence especially powerful. By the time cubs begin venturing toward the mouth of the den, the world they meet is already rich with scent, sound, and potential food. Their parents are raising them at the very moment when prey becomes more available and cover increases in the vegetation. Spring does not just provide a pretty backdrop for their arrival. It builds the nursery conditions they need. A fox cub's first season is therefore both intimate and enormous, beginning underground and opening into a world that is ready. Spring sunshine can trigger huge plankton blooms across cold northern seas. Far from gardens and woodlands, spring transforms the ocean too. In cold northern seas, winter mixing leaves surface waters rich in nutrients, but too dark for strong plant growth. Then daylight lengthens, and the upper ocean begins receiving enough sun for microscopic algae, called phytoplankton, to multiply rapidly. The result can be a bloom on a scale so vast it is visible from space. Water that looked empty becomes filled with drifting life, sometimes tinting the sea green or milky turquoise depending on the species involved. This is one of spring's grandest hidden events because it happens across huge reaches of ocean without most people ever witnessing it directly. Yet it is as seasonal and consequential as any flowering woodland. The sea responds to returning light just as the land does, only with microscopic plants rather than leaves and blossoms. Spring, then, is not confined to meadows and hedgerows. It also unfolds across cold oceans in living clouds too small to see individually. Those spring plankton blooms help feed entire ocean food webs. The great spring bloom at sea is not merely a burst of microscopic plant life. It is the opening meal for countless larger lives that depend on it. Tiny animals called zooplankton graze on the phytoplankton, and those grazers in turn feed fish larvae, shellfish, and other creatures near the base of the marine food web. From there, the energy can move upward into bigger fish, seabirds, and marine mammals. In some regions, the timing is crucial. Fish hatchlings need enough food at just the right stage of development, and seabirds may breed to match the surge in prey that follows the bloom. What begins as sunlight captured by drifting cells can ripple through an entire ecosystem. This gives spring in the ocean the same logic we see on land. A seasonal pulse at the bottom supports abundance above. The scale is simply harder for us to picture because the first act happens in cold water and starts with organisms invisible to the naked eye. Arctic spring can arrive suddenly, with life racing through constant daylight. In the far north, spring can feel less like a gradual unfolding and more like a starting gun. After a long season of darkness and brutal cold, the return of light accelerates with astonishing speed until some places approach continuous daylight. When that happens, life does not dawdle. Snow buntings nest, migratory birds pour in, plants begin growing with fierce urgency, and animals that survived the long winter move quickly to feed and breed. The season is short, so everything is compressed. There is no leisurely drift from one month to the next. There is a rush to use every hour, and in the Arctic, those hours barely pause at all. A flower, an insect, a bird chick, and a browsing caribou may all be tied into the same narrow window. That is what makes northern spring so thrilling. It is a season under pressure where life seems to sprint through light because it knows the cold will return. In tundra regions, spring can transform frozen ground into wetlands within days. Tundra may look solid in winter, but as spring advances, the surface can change with startling speed. The upper layer of soil begins to thaw while deeper ground beneath remains frozen, often because of permafrost. Water from melting snow cannot easily drain downward, so it spreads across the land instead. What was a hard white plain can become a patchwork of pools, saturated moss, and shining channels in a matter of days. This sudden wetness is not a minor detail. It creates breeding habitat for insects, feeding grounds for birds, and vital seasonal resources for animals moving across the north. It also changes how the land feels underfoot, turning firmness into softness and silence into buzzing life. Spring on the tundra is therefore not only a change in temperature, it is a dramatic rearrangement of water. The ground itself seems to loosen and flood, creating a temporary world where frozen earth and shallow wetlands coexist at once. Some alpine flowers bloom inches from snow, that has barely melted. High in the mountains, spring lives on a knife edge. Snow may still lie in drifts, while nearby patches of exposed ground already hold flowers. Alpine plants have evolved to exploit these tiny windows of opportunity with remarkable toughness. Many stay low to the ground, which shelters them from wind and lets them benefit from slightly warmer air near the surface. Some form dense cushions that hold heat. Others begin growth the moment snow pulls back, using stored energy and racing through a short season before cold returns. The result is one of spring's most startling sights. Delicate petals appear beside ice, as though summer and winter have collided on the same slope. Yet these blooms are not fragile accidents. They are specialists of harsh places, built for extremes and timed with extraordinary precision. In alpine country, spring does not wait for comfort. It begins wherever the mountain grants a few bare inches, and that is enough. Sea ice retreat in spring can change when seals and birds breed. In polar and subpolar regions, the edge of sea ice is not just a boundary between frozen and open water. It is a shifting habitat that shapes the timing of life. As spring advances and ice retreats, light reaches the water differently. Prey patterns change, and animals that depend on the ice must adjust. Some seals use sea ice for pupping or resting. Many seabirds depend on productive waters near the retreating edge, where food can become concentrated. If that ice pulls back earlier or later than usual, the schedule of breeding and feeding can shift with it. This makes the spring breakup of sea ice a biological clock as well as a physical event. It determines when nurseries, hunting grounds, and feeding corridors become available. A moving edge on the ocean map can ripple through entire populations. Spring in icy seas is therefore not merely thaw. It is the opening and closing of a habitat that many species cannot ignore. Spring winds carry dust, spores, scents, seeds, and even distant microbes. Air in spring is rarely empty. Even when it feels fresh and clear, it can be crowded with travelers. Winds lift dust from dry ground, fungal spores from soil and bark, scents from blossom and leaf, and seeds built to sail or spin across open space. They can also carry bacteria and other microbes from distant landscapes, oceans, or farms, moving life through the atmosphere in ways most of us never notice. This gives spring a hidden traffic system above our heads. A gust is not only moving air. It may be transporting the ingredients of future forests, future allergies, future decay, and future bloom. The season becomes a time of aerial exchange, with landscapes sending material to one another through currents that ignore borders. There is something extraordinary in that thought. A breeze across your face may contain traces of fields, woods, wetlands, and mountains far beyond sight. Spring does not only awaken places, it also connects them through the air. Thunderstorms often grow stronger in spring as warm and cold air collide. Spring can produce some of the year's most dramatic weather because it is a season of confrontation. Winter air masses may still be pushing south or east, while warmer, more humid air begins surging north or inland. Where those contrasting air masses meet, the atmosphere can become unstable very quickly. Warm air rises, moisture condenses, and towering clouds build into thunderstorms. In some regions, spring is famous for severe storms, hail, or even tornadoes, for exactly this reason. The season is not yet settled, and that instability gives the sky energy to work with. A mild afternoon can darken into thunder with astonishing speed. What makes this especially fascinating is that the violence comes from transition itself. Spring weather is powerful not because the season is calm and mature, but because it is unfinished. Two different atmospheric worlds are trying to occupy the same space. When they clash, the result can be one of the year's most dramatic performances. Spring skies can look clearer because winter haze and summer humidity differ. There are days in spring when the sky seems almost newly washed, with a kind of brightness and depth that feels different from other seasons. Part of that impression comes from the atmosphere itself. In many places, winter can bring low cloud, smoke, trapped pollution, or muted light, while summer often carries heavier humidity that softens distant detail and turns the air hazier. Spring frequently sits between those conditions. The sun is climbing higher, yet the air may still be relatively dry and crisp compared with what comes later. That combination can produce remarkable visibility, sharper shadows, and stronger color contrasts across the landscape. Hills appear closer. Cloud edges look cleaner. Blue sky feels deeper. Of course, this varies by region and weather pattern, but the effect is familiar enough to shape memory. People often speak of spring light as if it were emotionally different, and in a real physical sense it can be, because the atmosphere is presenting the world with unusual clarity. The first warm spring day often arrives before spring has truly settled. One bright, warm day can make it feel as though the season has fully arrived, yet spring often works by teasing before it commits. A sudden pulse of warmth may wake insects, draw people outdoors, and fill parks and gardens with a sense of release. Birds sing harder. Coats come off. Windows open. The whole world seems to lean forward. Then, just as quickly, cold air can return and remind everyone that the season is still negotiating with winter. This is part of spring's emotional power. It does not advance in a straight line. It offers glimpses, then withdraws, then advances again. That first warm day becomes memorable because it is both promise and preview. It shows what is coming without guaranteeing permanence. In some ways, that makes it more thrilling than a settled summer afternoon. It carries surprise. It feels earned. It lets people experience the future season early, if only for a moment, before the atmosphere changes its mind again. False springs can trick plants into blooming before frost strikes again. A false spring happens when a spell of unusual warmth convinces plants that it is time to wake, only for cold conditions to return afterward. Buds open, blossoms unfold, and tender new growth appears at exactly the wrong moment. Then frost arrives and can blacken flowers, damage leaves, or wipe out the year's fruit crop in orchards and gardens. This is one of spring's crueler dramas, because it reveals the cost of mistaking a signal for the real thing. Plants are not careless. Many use a mix of cues to avoid waking too early. Yet no system is perfect, especially when weather swings sharply. For humans, a false spring can feel emotionally deceptive too. The landscape briefly looks transformed, then suffers a reversal. What seemed like arrival becomes exposure. That tension gives the season much of its suspense. Spring is not merely a march toward life. It is also a test of timing, and sometimes the world answers just a little too soon. Fruit farmers sometimes light fires to save spring blossoms from freezing. An orchard in spring can become a place of midnight vigilance. When blossoms are open, even a short freeze can destroy the delicate tissues that would have become fruit. To protect them, growers have used methods that seem almost ancient in their drama, including lighting controlled fires or heaters among the trees on vulnerable nights. The goal is not to make the whole orchard comfortably warm, but to nudge temperatures just enough, or to keep air moving in a way that prevents the coldest conditions from settling around the blossoms. Wind machines, sprinklers, and other techniques may also be used, but fire remains one of the most striking images. Rows of trees under a dark sky, with flames or glowing burners scattered between them, turn agriculture into something that looks ceremonial. yet it is practical and urgent. Spring may promise abundance, but first, the crop has to survive. Sometimes that means meeting a freezing dawn with smoke, heat, and human watchfulness. Spring rain does not just water plants, it also wakes microbes. When spring rain soaks the ground, it is doing far more than helping leaves and stems. It is also reactivating vast communities of microscopic life that had slowed through winter cold. Bacteria begin feeding more actively. Fungi spread through damp soil and leaf litter. Dormant cells revive, and chemical processes that were nearly stalled begin moving again. This matters because microbes are the hidden workers that release nutrients, break down dead material, and help make the soil usable for growing roots. A rain shower can therefore act like a starting bell for an underground workforce. What looks from above like simple wet weather is, below the surface, a surge of metabolism and exchange. The earth becomes busier, more reactive, more alive. Spring growth depends on that awakening. A green shoot rising into the air is only part of the story. Beneath it, rain has already stirred countless invisible lives into motion, and they are helping power the season from below. Soil can release a richer, earthy smell in spring after winter quiet. There are moments in spring when the ground seems to breathe out a scent that feels ancient and deeply familiar. That rich, earthy smell often becomes stronger after rain or warming weather because moisture and rising biological activity help release compounds from soil and decaying plant matter into the air. One of the key contributors is geosmin, a substance produced by certain microbes that humans can detect in astonishingly tiny amounts. After winter, when the ground has been colder and less active, that scent can feel especially vivid. It carries the sense that something hidden has resumed. The smell is not merely pleasant background. It is evidence that decomposition, microbial life, and moisture are interacting again in ways our noses are finely tuned to notice. This may be one reason spring can feel so immediate and physical. Before you see every change, you can smell the season arriving. The earth itself announces that its long pause is ending. Earthworms become more active in spring, reshaping soil from below. As the ground warms and moisture returns, earthworms begin moving through the soil with renewed intensity. Their work is easy to overlook because it happens almost entirely out of sight, yet it quietly changes the structure of the land beneath our feet. By tunneling, they open channels that help air and water move through the soil. By feeding on dead plant material and mineral particles, they mix organic matter downward and leave behind nutrient-rich casts. These casts can improve fertility and help create crumbly soil that roots can more easily explore. In spring, when plants are beginning a new season of growth, that hidden engineering becomes especially valuable. A lawn, field, woodland, or garden may seem still at the surface, but below it, worms are loosening, blending, and rebuilding. The season is often celebrated for birds and blossoms, yet part of its success depends on these soft-bodied diggers, turning wet spring ground into a better place for life to take hold. Spring sunlight changes how quickly compost, leaf litter, and wood decay. Decay does not happen at one constant speed through the year. In spring, longer days and rising temperatures begin altering how quickly dead material breaks down across gardens, woodlands, and forest floors. Compost heaps warm more readily. Leaf litter holds moisture while microbial and fungal activity increases. Fallen branches and rotting logs begin shifting from winter stillness into a more active state of decomposition. Sunlight plays an indirect but important role in this by warming surfaces, changing moisture patterns, and helping create conditions that decomposers can use. What seems like waste is actually one of spring's great transformations. Last year's leaves, stems, and wood become part of this year's growing system through countless acts of feeding and breakdown. The season is therefore not only about new life appearing, it is also about old life being dismantled and returned. A woodland in spring is recycling itself, and the process is every bit as important as the first new leaves above. Ant colonies can reopen ancient underground highways when spring ground softens. When the soil softens after winter, ant colonies can begin using passages that have existed beneath the ground far longer than any single season. Some nests persist for years, with tunnels, chambers, and roots expanded, repaired, and reused by generation after generation. Spring gives these buried networks new life. Workers emerge more regularly, clear blocked entrances, repair damaged sections, and restart the movement of food, larvae, and information through the colony. To us, an anthill may seem small and simple. Underneath, it can connect to a surprisingly elaborate system of shafts and rooms shaped by long collective labor. The return of warmer conditions turns that hidden architecture back on. A patch of ordinary ground becomes an active city again, with traffic patterns and tasks resuming as if winter were only an interruption. Spring on the surface may look like blossom and birdsong, but down below, ancient miniature roads are reopening, and commerce is beginning again. Some spiders launch into spring air by ballooning on silk threads. A tiny spider can do something that feels almost impossible. It climbs to a raised point, lifts its abdomen, releases strands of silk, and lets the moving air pull it free into the sky. This behavior is called ballooning, and it allows spiders, especially the young, to disperse across remarkable distances. In spring, when fresh habitats are opening and insect prey is increasing, that aerial journey can help them colonize fields, gardens, hedgerows, and even remote places. Some may travel only a short way. Others can rise much higher and drift far beyond what their size would ever suggest possible. To imagine this properly is to see spring air not as empty space, but as a migration route for creatures smaller than a fingernail. A field may receive its spring spiders not only from the ground nearby, but from the sky itself. The season is full of movement, and some of its travelers arrive floating on threads too fine for human eyes to follow. Dragonflies begin life underwater long before they glitter through spring air. The dragonfly that flashes past a pond in sunlight is the final stage of a much longer hidden existence. Before it becomes a flying hunter, it spends much of its life underwater as a nymph, living among weeds, mud, and submerged stems. There it is already a predator, stalking small aquatic creatures with extendable mouthparts and breathing in ways adapted to a watery world. Depending on the species, that submerged phase can last many months or even years. Then, when the time is right, the nymph climbs out onto a reed, stone, or bankside plant. Its skin splits, and the winged adult slowly emerges into the spring air. Few transformations capture the season more dramatically. A creature that has been living in still water suddenly becomes a brilliant aerial hunter of ponds, rivers, and marshes. Spring does not merely bring dragonflies into view. It reveals that one landscape can hide two entirely different lives within the same animal. Mosquito season often starts with spring puddles no bigger than footprints. It does not take a grand wetland to begin a mosquito season. A hoofprint filled with rain, a blocked gutter, a forgotten bucket, or a puddle pressed into a path can be enough for some species to lay eggs and begin development. That is what makes mosquitoes such effective spring opportunists. They do not always need lakes, ponds, or marshes. They can exploit small, temporary containers of water that appear almost anywhere after rain. In those shallow pools, larvae wriggle below the surface, feeding and growing in a world tiny enough to fit in your hand. This gives spring a miniature scale of drama that people rarely stop to picture. An ordinary patch of standing water can become a nursery crowded with future adults. It also explains why mosquito numbers can rise with surprising speed once conditions are right. The season is not only built from large landscapes. Sometimes it turns on small wet hollows scattered across gardens, tracks, and city edges. Spring can bring more bird collisions as migration surges through cities. As migration intensifies in spring, cities can become unexpectedly dangerous places for birds on the move. Glass is a major problem. Reflections of sky, trees, or open space can make a window seem like a safe flight path, while bright lights and illuminated buildings can disorient birds traveling at night. During peak migration, large numbers may pass through urban areas in a short period, and that increases the risk of fatal strikes. What makes this so tragic is that the birds are often arriving after immense journeys, having crossed seas, deserts, and weather systems, only to meet an obstacle built from reflection and confusion. Spring cities therefore reveal a strange tension between human architecture and seasonal movement. Towers, offices, homes, and transport hubs stand directly in routes shaped long before those structures existed. The season still flows through urban space, but it does so at a cost. Migration is not only beautiful. In modern landscapes, it can also be perilous in very human ways. City spring often arrives earlier because streets and buildings trap heat. Cities often warm faster than nearby countryside, and that can make spring appear earlier within urban streets, parks, and gardens. Concrete, brick, and asphalt absorb heat during the day and release it slowly, while reduced vegetation and sheltered streets can keep nighttime temperatures a little higher than in surrounding rural areas. This is part of the urban heat island effect, and it can influence when buds open, when insects become active, and when trees begin leafing out. Walk from a dense town center into open farmland, and you may sometimes feel as though you have moved backward by several days in the season. The difference is not imaginary. Urban materials, traffic, and building patterns create their own local climate. That means spring is not just shaped by latitude, height, or distance from the sea. It can also be shaped by architecture. A city becomes a slightly warmer version of the region around it, and the season often responds by arriving sooner. Urban trees may leaf out sooner than trees in nearby countryside. A tree growing along a city street may begin spring before its relative only a few miles away in open farmland. The reason is not mystery, but microclimate. Pavements, walls, traffic, and buildings store warmth and release it through the night, softening the cold that would otherwise slow bud development. Shelter from wind can help too. In a rural field, a tree stands more exposed to clear skies and sharp temperature drops. In town, it may live inside a pocket of slightly earlier spring. This difference can be surprisingly visible. City avenues begin to haze green, while hedgerow trees beyond the suburbs still wait. The contrast reminds us that spring is never truly uniform, even across a small region. It arrives by neighborhoods, by streets, by exposed corners and sheltered courtyards. A tree is not responding to a calendar date. It is responding to the exact air, light, and heat around its own branches, and cities quietly rewrite those conditions. People often feel more energetic in spring as daylight lengthens. Many people notice a lift in energy as spring advances, and there is real biology behind that feeling. Longer days change the amount and timing of light reaching the eyes, and light is one of the strongest signals the brain uses to regulate alertness, mood, and daily rhythms. After darker winter months, brighter mornings and evenings can make the body feel more awake and more willing to move. This does not mean everyone suddenly becomes cheerful or tireless, But for many people, spring does seem to loosen something. Walks grow easier to begin. Rooms feel less enclosing. The world outside appears more available. Part of the effect is psychological, because color, warmth, and activity return around us. Part of it is physiological, because the body is reading a changing light environment and adjusting accordingly. Spring is not only a season we observe. It is a season that can change how we feel from the inside, nudging us toward wakefulness and motion. Spring can change sleep patterns by shifting melatonin and morning light. Sleep is tied closely to light, and spring changes that relationship in ways many people feel without fully noticing why. Melatonin, the hormone associated with darkness and sleep timing, is influenced by when bright light reaches the eyes. As spring mornings become earlier and lighter, the body may begin shifting its internal schedule. Some people wake earlier. Some find evening sleepiness arrives differently. The effect can be subtle, yet it helps explain why the season sometimes feels like a reset. Morning light is especially powerful because it tells the brain when the day begins, and spring keeps delivering that message sooner and more strongly. At the same time, longer evenings can tempt people to stay awake later, which creates its own tug on routine. So the season can make sleep feel newly fluid, not because anything magical has happened, but because the planet has changed the timing of light in our lives. Spring reaches the bedroom through the window long before we think about it. Some people really do get spring fever, and science partly agrees. Spring fever sounds like an old phrase from poetry or folk wisdom, yet it points to a real cluster of seasonal experiences. People often report restlessness, higher energy, distractibility, or a sudden urge to go outdoors when spring arrives. Science does not treat it as a formal disease, but the idea is not nonsense. Changes in light, temperature, sleep timing, and daily routine can all alter mood and behavior. After winter confinement, people may also respond strongly to the social opening of the season. Parks fill, windows open, streets grow busier. The world becomes less enclosed, and human behavior changes with it. There may even be shifts in hormones and neurotransmitters linked to light exposure and activity patterns. So, spring fever is best understood as a poetic name for a genuine seasonal stirring rather than a single medical condition. It captures the moment when the body and mind both begin leaning outward, as though winter habits no longer fit quite the same way. Allergy season is a spring battle between immune systems and harmless pollen. For many people, spring's most beautiful airborne material becomes an unwanted alarm signal. Pollen is designed for plant reproduction, not human distress, yet immune systems sometimes misread it as a dangerous invader. In response, the body releases chemicals such as histamine, which can trigger sneezing, itchy eyes, swelling, and streaming noses. The remarkable thing is that the pollen itself is often harmless. The drama comes from the body's interpretation. A grain released by a tree in order to reach another flower ends up starting a defensive reaction inside a completely different species. That gives allergy season an odd, tragic comedy. Plants are simply trying to reproduce. Humans are acting as though under attack. Spring becomes a biological misunderstanding carried on the wind. It also reminds us how sensitive our bodies are to the surrounding world. A season can enter through the nose, reach the immune system, and turn a flowering landscape into a full internal battle over something never meant to be a threat. Spring colors attract humans too, because brains are tuned to fresh cues. The brightening greens of spring do more than please the eye. They may also tap into old perceptual biases shaped by survival. Fresh growth can signal water, food, seasonal opportunity, and safer travel conditions, all of which matter deeply to human ancestors. Even now, many people respond strongly to the first vivid greens, blossom colors and brighter outdoor scenes of spring. The effect is partly cultural and partly biological. Human vision is highly sensitive to contrast and color change, especially when the landscape has been relatively muted for months. A tree shifting from bare twigs to luminous green is not only beautiful, it is a major visual update, and the brain notices. Spring often feels refreshing because it is rich in cues that say conditions are improving. That may be one reason the season can alter mood so powerfully. We are not detached observers of the greening world. Our attention is drawn toward it, as if some older part of us still recognizes its promise. Many ancient calendars treated spring, not winter, as the true new year. To many ancient peoples, beginning the year in the dead of winter would have felt less intuitive than beginning it when life visibly restarted. Spring brought sowing, lambing, movement, and the return of usable landscapes after cold or darkness. It made practical sense as a threshold. In agricultural societies especially, the true cycle of effort and renewal often began when the land did. That is why several old calendar systems placed the new year near the spring equinox or early spring months, rather than in midwinter. The logic is easy to feel even now. A new year in spring seems connected to reality outside the door. Fields change. Trees wake. Daylight grows. Human plans can begin to align with visible renewal in the world itself. This gives spring a deeper cultural role than simple pleasant weather. It becomes a natural candidate for beginnings, a season that seems to say, start again, not by abstract number, but by the turning of life around us. Easter, Passover, and Nowruz all carry deep connections to spring's return. Across very different cultures and religious traditions, major observances gather around spring because the season itself has long felt charged with meaning. Easter is linked with rebirth and is dated in relation to the spring equinox and the full moon. Passover arrives in northern spring and carries themes of liberation, journey, and historical renewal at a season when the land itself is changing. Nowruz, the Persian New Year, is anchored directly to the equinox and celebrates a fresh beginning at the moment of seasonal balance. These are not identical traditions, and they should not be blended into one story. Yet it is striking that all are tied in some way to this turning of the year. Spring offers a natural language for hope, release, and reordering. The physical world shifts from scarcity toward abundance, from dormancy toward activity, and human meaning gathers around that movement. The season becomes both calendar and metaphor, shaping ritual as surely as it shapes fields and trees. Persian New Year begins at the exact moment of the spring equinox. Nowruz is one of the world's most elegant examples of a new year tied directly to astronomy. Rather than beginning at midnight by convention, it begins at the precise instant of the spring equinox, when the sun crosses the celestial equator and the seasonal balance shifts. That gives the celebration a remarkable sense of alignment. Human timekeeping and planetary motion meet at one exact moment. Families prepare in advance, clean homes, arrange symbolic objects, and wait for the turning point itself, which may come by day or night depending on location. The idea is beautiful because it makes the new year feel not merely announced, but arrived. A calculation in the sky becomes a threshold in ordinary life. Spring is welcomed not as a vague mood, but as a measurable event that can be anticipated to the second. Few traditions join cosmic precision and domestic ritual so gracefully. The whole earth turns, and at that turning, the year begins again. Ancient monuments were aligned to mark spring light with astonishing precision. Long before modern instruments, people were watching the sky closely enough to build stone, earth, and timber structures that interacted with seasonal light in deliberate ways. At some ancient sites, the rising or setting sun near the spring equinox illuminates a passage, aligns with a doorway, or marks a position on the horizon that would have been meaningful to those who gathered there. These alignments were not casual decoration. They suggest careful observation repeated over many seasons, then translated into architecture. That is what feels so astonishing. Spring light was important enough to measure, remember, and build around. A monument became a calendar in stone. It allowed a community to witness the season with ceremony and certainty, seeing the sky answer the structure exactly as expected. Even when scholars debate the purpose of specific sites, the broader pattern remains striking. Humans have long treated spring not only as weather, but as an event worthy of geometry, labor, and lasting memory. Farmers once watched spring flowers closely to decide when to sow crops. Long before forecasts, apps, and laboratory soil tests, farmers often relied on the living calendar around them. Certain spring flowers opened at roughly the same stage of the season year after year, and that made them useful signals. If blackthorn was blooming, or hawthorn was beginning, or local hedges and meadows had reached a familiar stage, it could suggest that the soil had warmed enough, or that frost risk had shifted in a way worth noting. This was not superstition in the simple sense. It was close observation turned into practical memory. Plants and crops were both responding to the same broad conditions of temperature, moisture, and daylight, so one could serve as a guide to the other. The countryside itself became a clock. Spring was read from petals, leafing branches, and birdsong as much as from any written date. That way of seeing reminds us that farming once depended not only on labor, but on noticing exactly how the season unfolded in each local place. The old saying about March weather survives because spring is unstable. March has a reputation for changeability because it often sits right in the struggle between winter's hold and spring's advance. A day can begin with frost, turn bright and almost warm by noon, then end with biting wind or sleet. That instability has impressed people for centuries, which is why so many sayings, warnings, and bits of folk wisdom gather around the month. The science behind it is straightforward enough. The atmosphere is still capable of delivering cold air from winter patterns, yet increasing sunlight is also adding heat to land and lower air. Those competing influences make weather swing sharply. Spring has not settled into itself yet. It is still a negotiation. That is why March feels so vivid in memory. It keeps changing its mind. One day offers promise, the next offers a reminder. The old sayings endure because they describe a real feature of the season, which is that spring often begins not with calm certainty, but with argument in the sky. In Britain, blue tits time nesting with the spring caterpillar boom. For blue tits, spring is not just about building a nest and laying eggs. It is about hitting a narrow food peak with remarkable accuracy. Their chicks need soft, protein-rich prey, and one of the best sources is the explosion of caterpillars that appears as trees leaf out. In oak woods especially, newly opened leaves can support huge numbers of tiny caterpillars, and blue tits have evolved to try to match their breeding schedule to that brief abundance. Eggs must be laid early enough that hatching and peak chick hunger coincide with the food rush outside. If the timing works, parents can bring back beakful after beakful to a nest full of demanding young. If it misses, raising chicks becomes much harder. What makes this so fascinating is the precision involved. A small bird in a garden box or woodland cavity is effectively trying to predict the seasonal pulse of an entire insect population. Spring for blue tits is therefore a matter of exquisite scheduling, not simple good luck. Oak trees support spring food chains that depend on near-perfect timing. An oak in spring is more than a tree producing leaves. It is a platform for an entire seasonal cascade. As buds open and fresh foliage appears, caterpillars and other leaf-eating insects begin feeding in large numbers. Those insects then become food for birds, especially species trying to raise hungry chicks at exactly this moment. The whole chain depends on the timing being close. If leaves open late, insects may be delayed. If insects peak before chicks hatch, food can be missed. A single oak can therefore serve as a kind of spring engine, turning sunlight and new leaf tissue into a wave of animal life above and around it. This is one reason oak woodlands are so ecologically rich. They support complex communities whose seasonal rhythms are linked with the tree's annual schedule. Spring in an oak canopy is not only greenery returning, it is the opening movement of a tightly connected food web, with leaves setting the pace for lives far beyond the tree itself. Spring mismatch can happen when insects emerge before hungry chicks hatch. Spring works best when many separate timings line up. Plants leaf out, insects appear, and birds hatch their young in the right sequence. But those schedules do not always shift at the same speed. A warm early season may bring insects out sooner, while birds that rely on day length or other cues may not advance their breeding enough to match. The result is a mismatch. By the time chicks hatch and need their greatest supply of food, the richest pulse of caterpillars or other prey may already be fading. This can reduce growth and survival in nests that would otherwise thrive. The idea is both simple and profound. Nature's seasonal abundance is not just about quantity, it is about timing. Spring is a chain of appointments, and trouble begins when one participant arrives too early or another too late. A woodland may look beautifully green and full of life, yet hidden within that beauty, there can be missed meetings that matter deeply. Some fish begin spring spawning runs by sensing tiny temperature changes. For certain fish, spring begins as a signal felt in the water itself. A very small rise in temperature can be enough to shift behavior, drawing fish upstream toward shallows or into the specific habitats where spawning takes place. The change may seem insignificant to us, but in a river or lake, it can mean that the season has crossed an important threshold. Fish respond because eggs and young need the right conditions, and those conditions are closely tied to water temperature, flow, and seasonal productivity. The result can be a remarkable movement of bodies through water that looked quiet only days before. Channels fill with urgency. Shoals gather. Individuals push into gravel beds or flooded margins with clear purpose. Spring on land often announces itself loudly with blossom or birdsong. In water, it may begin with a fraction of a degree. Yet that slight warming can set whole populations in motion, turning rivers into routes of reproduction and return. Salmon are not alone. Many freshwater fish wait for spring cues. Salmon are famous for their migrations, but they are only one part of a much wider spring story in freshwater. Many fish species wait for seasonal cues before spawning or moving into breeding habitat. Pike may enter flooded margins. Roach, perch, and bream respond to warming water and changing light. In some regions, smelt and shad begin spectacular seasonal movements that pass almost unnoticed by people on the shore. What ties these fish together is not one identical behavior, but a shared dependence on timing. Spring changes rivers, lakes, and wetlands in ways that matter for eggs, larvae, and food supply. So fish must read those changes carefully. Beneath a river surface that appears calm, an invisible season is beginning. Shoals shift position. Bodies darken or brighten. Reproductive tissues mature. Places that were winter refuges give way to breeding routes. The water fills with purpose. Spring is not only moving through woods and fields, it is traveling through rivers as well. Spring melt can carry nutrients that fertilize lakes, rivers, and coasts. When snow and ice melt, they do more than add water to streams. They also transport nutrients gathered from soils, decaying plants, and the wider landscape. As meltwater runs downhill, it can carry nitrogen, phosphorus, and organic material into ponds, rivers, estuaries, and coastal seas. In the right balance, that influx helps fuel spring productivity by feeding algae, aquatic plants, and the small organisms at the base of food webs. It is one way land and water stay linked through the season. What happens on slopes, fields, and forest floors does not stay there. Spring runoff stitches ecosystems together by moving dissolved material from one to the next. This makes melt a kind of delivery system as well as a flood pulse. Lakes can green, wetlands can flourish, and coastal waters can become more productive, partly because the thaw has arrived upstream. Spring is therefore not only a local awakening, it is a transfer of resources across whole connected landscapes. Even glaciers have a spring marked by meltwater, cracks, and movement. A glacier may seem timeless and frozen beyond season, yet it too has a spring. As temperatures rise and sunlight strengthens, meltwater begins forming on the surface and along the margins. That water can pour into crevasses, carve channels, and reach the base of the ice, where it lubricates movement in ways that subtly alter how the glacier slides. The surface may darken in places with exposed debris. Cracks may open or shift. Streams burst from the snout carrying milky sediment ground from rock below. All of this means that a glacier is not a static block waiting for summer. It responds dynamically as the season changes. Spring on ice is quieter than spring in a woodland, but no less real. Movement increases. Water returns. Sound changes. A world that looked locked begins to flex and drain. Even in one of Earth's coldest landscapes, the year still turns, and the season announces itself through melt, fracture, and motion. Spring fog can form when warming air drifts over still cold ground. Some spring mornings begin with a landscape half hidden, not because winter has returned, but because the season itself has created the conditions for fog. As milder air moves in over ground or water that remains chilled from recent cold, the lower air can cool enough for moisture to condense into tiny droplets. The result is a veil that settles into fields, hollows, coastlines, or river valleys just as the day begins. This kind of fog captures one of spring's essential tensions. The air is trying to warm. The land is still holding winter's memory. Where they meet, visibility softens, and the landscape seems to hover between seasons. It is a beautiful reminder that spring is not simply the absence of cold. It is a negotiation between what has been and what is arriving. Fog makes that negotiation visible. It turns temperature difference into atmosphere, and for a little while the season appears not in blossom or birdsong, but in breath-like white suspended above the ground. Cuckoos became symbols of spring because their calls announce seasonal change. Across much of Europe, the call of the cuckoo became one of spring's most famous sounds because it arrives like a seasonal signal heard before the bird is clearly seen. The two-note call carries far through woods, farmland, and open country, and for generations people treated it as one of the year's turning points. Folklore grew around the first call, linking it to luck, money, love, and weather, which shows how deeply the sound entered ordinary life. Part of its power lies in timing. After winter quiet, a distinctive voice suddenly returns and seems to stamp the landscape with the season. The bird itself is elusive, often more often heard than watched, which only adds to the effect. Spring is full of visible signs, yet this one arrives by ear. A single repeated call can change how a whole morning feels. because it tells people that migration, warmth, and the old cycle are underway again. Swallows return so faithfully that people once thought they hibernated underwater. Before migration was properly understood, the sudden disappearance and reappearance of swallows seemed mysterious enough to inspire astonishing theories. In Europe, one old belief held that they spent winter asleep underwater, hidden in mud at the bottom of ponds or lakes. That idea sounds bizarre now. If it shows how faithfully these birds returned and how little their true journeys were known. Swallows vanish in autumn, then reappear in spring with such apparent punctuality that people searched for explanations close to home. The real story is far more extraordinary. These birds travel vast distances between continents, crossing deserts and seas, then come back to the same barns, eaves, and nesting places that people remember from previous years. Their return made them powerful symbols of the season because it felt personal as well as seasonal. Spring was not only arriving in the weather, it was arriving with familiar wings, as if the air itself had brought old neighbors home again. Lambs became spring symbols because pasture growth and birth often coincide. Lands feel woven into spring because their arrival often matches the season's return of grass, milder weather, and longer days. For sheep kept in seasonal farming systems, giving birth when pastures begin growing strongly makes practical sense. Ewes need abundant food for milk production, and young lambs benefit from warmer conditions and greener fields once they are strong enough to follow. That is why the image became so enduring. It is not merely sentimental. It reflects an agricultural rhythm in which animal life and plant growth rise together. A meadow with lambs seems to capture spring perfectly because it joins movement, appetite, vulnerability, and abundance in one scene. The landscape is feeding the mothers at the same moment the mothers are feeding the young. Over time, that practical alignment became a cultural symbol. Lambs came to represent innocence and renewal, yet behind the symbol lies a precise seasonal logic shaped by grass, weather, and the demands of early life. Spring moonlight can influence coral spawning, insect behavior, and animal movement. Spring is often imagined as a season ruled by sunlight, yet moonlight can matter too. In some marine systems, lunar cycles help synchronize coral spawning, with many colonies releasing eggs and sperm in coordinated events timed to seasonal warmth and specific moon phases. On land, spring moonlight can influence nocturnal insects, altering how they navigate, feed, or avoid predators. It can also shape the movements of animals such as migrating birds, mammals, and amphibians that travel or forage under cover of darkness. The moon does not act alone, but as part of a wider seasonal pattern of light, temperature, and timing. That is what makes it so fascinating. Spring is not orchestrated by the sun only. Night has its own signals, and some of them are written in silver rather than gold. A brighter spring night may be changing behavior across sea and land in subtle ways, guiding reproduction, travel, and risk in species living by cues most people barely notice. The season of mud is also a season of engineering for beavers. When spring water rises and the ground softens, beavers enter one of their most active times for repair, construction, and adjustment. Winter ice, storms, and fluctuating water levels can damage dams and lodges, so spring often brings a burst of maintenance. Mud, sticks, stones, and fresh-cut branches become building materials in a landscape suddenly easier to shape. A beaver pond is not a static feature left behind after one burst of effort. It is a managed system that needs attention, and spring gives both the materials and the hydraulic conditions that make that work possible. What looks like a messy, muddy season to us is, to a beaver, prime engineering weather. Channels can be reopened, leaks can be sealed, new food caches can be approached by water. Wetlands expand or shift in response. Spring is therefore not only a season of natural awakening. In beaver country, it is also a season of infrastructure, with rodents quietly remaking landscapes one load at a time. Beavers use spring floods to move timber more easily through wetlands. High spring water turns wetlands into transport networks. For beavers, that can make heavy work much easier. Branches and cut stems that would be awkward to drag over mud or frozen ground can be floated, nudged, or guided through flooded channels toward dams and lodges. Water does the carrying, and the beavers exploit that advantage beautifully. This is one reason spring can be such a productive season in beaver territories. Rising levels connect ponds, side pools, and ditches that may later become harder to navigate, giving these animals expanded access to both building material and food. It is a wonderful example of a species using seasonal physics to reduce effort. The flood is not only a challenge to survive, it is also an opportunity to work with. Spring in a wetland therefore becomes partly a matter of logistics. Timber moves more readily, roots open up, and the whole watery landscape becomes a temporary hauling system built by the season itself. Spring is when many ecosystems run fastest, richest, and most efficiently. In many parts of the world, spring is the period when ecosystems hit a remarkable balance of energy, water, and biological timing. Light is increasing, moisture is often still abundant, and temperatures are moving into ranges that support rapid growth without the harsher stresses of high summer. Plants can photosynthesize strongly. Insects multiply. Birds breed. Grazers find fresh food. Streams, soils, and coastal waters often carry a recent pulse of nutrients. The result is a season when living systems can become exceptionally productive. It is as if many of the world's engines are running near their sweet spot at once. Not every region follows the same pattern, of course, but where it happens, the effect is unmistakable. Spring feels full because it often is full, not only in appearance, but in ecological performance. More energy is being captured, transferred, and used. The season becomes a time when life is not merely present. It is operating with extraordinary speed and richness. Scientists track spring's arrival globally using satellites, blossoms, birds, and buds. Spring is so important to ecology and agriculture that scientists monitor it with an impressive mix of methods, from high technology to old-fashioned observation. Satellites can detect the greening of vegetation across continents by measuring changes in reflected light. Ground observers record first blossoms, budburst, leafing dates, and bird arrivals in local habitats. Long-running nature records, volunteer networks, and research stations all contribute pieces of the puzzle. Together, these tools reveal that spring is measurable, moving, and uneven. One valley greens before another. One country's migration peak shifts. One mountain slope lags behind nearby lowland fields. Tracking these patterns helps researchers understand climate effects, crop timing, wildlife behavior, and ecosystem health. It also reveals something poetic beneath the data. Spring is vast, but it leaves fingerprints everywhere. A satellite sees it as a wave of changing color. A human observer sees it in a single bud or returning bird. Science joins those scales into one seasonal map. No single date can capture spring, because spring moves differently everywhere. Ask when spring begins, and the honest answer depends on where you stand and what you mean. Astronomers point to the equinox. Meteorologists use fixed months. Gardeners watch soil and buds. Migrating birds follow their own schedule. Mountains, cities, coasts, deserts, and tundra all experience the season differently, sometimes weeks apart. Even within one landscape, sheltered corners may advance before exposed ground nearby. That is why spring resists any single date. It is not a switch that flips across the whole planet at once. It is a moving pattern shaped by light, water, altitude, latitude, and the lives responding to them. This makes the season far more interesting than a page on a calendar could suggest. Spring is a procession rather than a point. It arrives in layers, by signals and thresholds, with each place negotiating its own version. The season becomes a reminder that time in nature is local, textured, and beautifully uneven across the earth. Spring is not one event, but a planetary chain reaction of life. What makes spring so astonishing is that it is never just one thing happening. It is not only warmer air or flowers or migration or thaw. It is a cascade. Daylight changes. Plants respond. Insects emerge. Birds adjust their movements. Soil organisms awaken. Rivers swell. Ocean plankton bloom. Grazers, predators, pollinators, and people all begin reacting to one another in linked sequences that ripple across the planet. One shift creates another. A bud feeds a caterpillar. A caterpillar feeds a chick. Meltwater feeds a river. A river feeds a wetland. Each part touches the next. That is why the season feels so alive. It is built from connections coming back online. Winter can slow, store, and suspend. Spring releases. The world does not simply brighten. It reconnects. Seen that way, the season is one of Earth's greatest annual performances, a global ignition of timing, energy, and relationship that turns separate lives into one vast unfolding process. As we come to the end of our journey through the season of spring, you may begin to notice just how vast it really is. We started with the tilt of the Earth, a quiet shift in light that set everything else in motion. And from that single change, an entire world began to respond. Forests waking in careful sequence, rivers breaking free and reshaping the land. Tiny creatures rising from soil and water, each one following its own hidden timing. Birds crossing continents to arrive at just the right moment. Blossoms opening, insects emerging, oceans blooming with life far beyond sight. Everywhere, signals were being sent and answered. Some visible, some carried on the wind, some written in light or temperature or memory deep within living things. What seemed like separate events revealed themselves as one connected unfolding. A chain reaction moving across the planet, linking soil to sky, leaf to wing, river to sea. And now, as all of that begins to settle in your mind, there is nothing you need to hold on to. You can let the images soften. Let the movement slow. Let the sense of connection remain, while the details gently drift. If you are still awake, you might like to continue the journey with another video waiting for you on screen. And if you enjoyed this one, feel free to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, simply rest. Let your breathing become slow and steady. Let your body feel heavy and supported. And allow your thoughts to quiet as the world continues its quiet turning without you. Sleep well, and good night.